Black News Hour, radio partnership between the Boston Globe and the historic Boston Black News. We're here as Black journalists to bring conversations about the news of the day to you, our loyal Black News Hour listeners and Boston Black News listeners. Welcome to the show.
So today, Kari, we're going to have a really interesting conversation as 420 is coming up. We're going to have a chat about the cannabis industry in Boston and just the conflicts that entrepreneurial access to or for the Black community, and also the historic conflicts of weed in our community. So for today, we have like a really star-studded lineup. We're going to have 3 dispensary owners, policy experts, and those who have worked for decades to oppose these stores and also this drug from proliferating in their community. So really excited for it.
Indeed. And one of them is somebody, I mentioned this to you before, I covered while shadowing a reporter at the Cannabis Control Commission when I was a fresh-faced radio journalist in Boston, just getting started. So going a little bit full circle, it'll be interesting. And we will have another segment called Let's Talk Boston with the dynamic duo of Tiana and Alana Bearfield.
I'm really excited. Just a side note, I think my mom is tuning in, and the first episode she's going to listen to me. I'm going to be talking about weed for a whole hour. So, Mom, we probably have some things to talk about after this. But it's going to be great, like we said, to hear from everyone. And this isn't just for us. We want to hear from our audience and from our listeners too. So if you have any questions during the show, we're here for it. You can ask us on Twitter using the hashtag Black News Hour. And for more content or to follow our newsletter, you can visit globe.com/Black News Hour. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Excellent. And before we begin, we want to say that Black News Hour is proud to sponsor the inaugural How to Boston While Black Summit. Join them April 28th to April 30th for 3 days of workshops, panels, and experiences aimed at aligning Boston's Black leaders, community, and our allies on the solutions and strategies to create a city we all want to live in. Get your tickets to the How to Boston While Black Summit online at summit.bostonwhileblack.com. Find your tribe, grow your network, navigate the city, most importantly, have fun. So if you're just tuning in, good morning again from Black News Hour. Our first segment today features people at the forefront of the cannabis industry here in Massachusetts. As 420, aka Weed Day, approaches, we wanted to ask what the business means for people and community of color. And so we will have with us Kobe Evans, Vanessa Jean-Baptiste, Brian Keith, and Shalene Title. So let's start off with Kobe. Kobe Evans is co-founder and co-owner of Pure Oasis. Evans and his business partner, Kevin Hart, both of which are Black men, made history when they opened Pure Oasis, Boston's first recreational dispensary in March of 2020.
And we also have Vanessa Jean-Baptiste. Jean-Baptiste is a co-founder and owner of Legal Greens in Brockton, and she too broke barriers as the first Black woman to open a recreational dispensary on the East Coast in March of 2021.
Then we have Brian Keith. He's one of the founders and owners of Rooted in Roxbury, a retail cannabis company owned and invested in exclusively by Boston residents of color. He planned the company alongside his wife, Joanne Keith, and Solomon and Rokia Chowdhury. Rooted in Roxbury is set to open later this year.
And last but definitely not least, we have Shalene Title. Title's an Indian American attorney and longtime drug policy activist who's been writing, passing, and implementing equitable cannabis laws for over 20 years. She's a fellow at the, I know there's a difference, Ohio State University's Drug Enforcement and Policy Center, CEO of the policy think tank Parabola Center, and a former commissioner of the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission from 2017 to 2020. I know that y'all are all booked and busy, so thank you all so much for being in community with us today. We greatly appreciate it. And I guess just to start off, I wanted to kind of throw a question at the 3 dispensary owners here. We know that it's already hard being a dispensary owner here, but there are also some nuances to being Black, and especially I know for Vanessa being a Black woman in this industry, and kind of just wanted to hear from each of you 3, just a little spiel about what those nuances are and how y'all have navigated it in the cannabis industry here so far. Whoever wants to start.
I'll start. So it's more so not giving up because we started not knowing anybody connected into the city. We didn't have any locations at all. And I just got approved by the state of Massachusetts to be economic empowerment. So it was more so us just figuring it out and figuring out how to get a location, figuring out how to navigate the regulations in the state and the city, and then just really not giving up and going all the way to where we could open. And now it's staying open.
Yeah.
It's a whole nother challenge within itself, but it's rewarding every day. It's a lot, but it's rewarding.
Yeah, I think that just to chime in on what Vanessa said, up until Massachusetts launching its initiative, 98% of the industry was owned by people who were well-heeled, well-funded, multi-state corporations. And so Massachusetts, in the social experiment, was one of the first to lay out a plan to create this opportunity for equity. And with that, as being the first, we did something that wasn't done before. And so there wasn't a lot of support. There was a lot of motivation. There was a lot of people who wanted you to win, but you still were left to your own devices and trying to, pull together resources and figure out how to actually get it done. So, a lot of sleepless nights, and there's still a lot of sleepless nights trying to, figure it all out. But it's rewarding and scary at the same time. And then, being a person of color, the financing comes into play because we don't have the organic resources. And that's really what created the need for the ballot measure, was the fact that there was this giant economic disparity. And so that, coupled with the fact that you need so much money to get it done, it's daunting. And a lot of people, wanted to apply for the economic empowerment designation, but once you realize how much capital is involved, there were way more people who didn't apply than who actually did, because of the need for capital is immense. And so it's challenging at the onset, and it's also challenging, as day to day and as you're in operations. But you just have a desire and a will to win.
I would add, apologies for the sun, it just came out of nowhere.
No, it's golden hour.
But the process itself, the predictability of the process, and whether it's municipality by municipality or even in Boston, just moving through the Boston Cannabis Board and the Boston Zoning Board of Appeals, we're lucky that the Cannabis Board does have a rubric and does have a manner in which they grade the proponents. But a lot of the times, just knowing what's going to happen, knowing what people are judging you on as you move through the process, feeling as if you are doing the right thing, but then realizing that you weren't. It just hasn't been, from the beginning to the end, or not the end, but to where we are today. It just has not been a very predictable process.
Certainly. I wanted to bring Shalene in on this, and actually Kobe definitely got into a bit of the question I was going to ask. I wanted to ask about the state Senate's new bill on trying to boost equity in the cannabis sector. When it happened, State Senator Sonia Chang Diaz, who is one of the people in charge of the state legislature's policy like on cannabis, that she said that basically the entry cash, that is such a big factor in the industry remaining overwhelmingly white and corporation owned here. So with Shalene, having been on the Cannabis Control Commission in the past, and working as a fellow with drug policy, how much would you say these efforts to make the cannabis industry more equitable are basically about racial justice? And obviously the rest of you can chime in on this too, but I wanted to see what Shalene had to say.
I think racial justice is the absolute center of all of this, because you can't legalize cannabis from scratch and pretend like the past 100 years didn't happen, and pretend like you didn't have Black and Latino communities specifically targeted. So the point of all of this was to level the playing field and to be fair. But we saw right away that no matter how hard the regulators tried and community members were trying to push these programs, that access to capital in particular was really difficult. And even though entrepreneurs like Kobe and Vanessa and Brian should be easily funded and completely creditworthy, because of the federal illegality of cannabis, it's very difficult to get capital. So that's one of the things that this bill would address. It took 4 long years of pushing for it. And then the other piece is that municipalities have been really difficult. Luckily, Boston is very committed to equity and has been all along, but most municipalities are not like that. So this bill would help to push it and keep racial justice at the center and forefront as it should be.
I'm not sure if maybe from the business owner perspective, I'm not sure if Kobe, Brian, Vanessa, if there's anything that y'all had to add or anything that Shalene may have not touched on.
Yeah, I think that, I'd just like to thank Shalene for, everything that she's done up until this point, because I don't know if people realize how instrumental she was in, laying the foundation. And I think, that's a key point in this conversation, is that we have to harken back to, the war on drugs, or the war on drugs, to talk about how we got here and why it's important, and why equity is critical, and what equity means. And I think that much has been attempted, and there were some very lofty ideas of what was possible in Massachusetts, but the realization of the goal may not necessarily bear the fruit that was intended in Massachusetts. But I think that we have created a foundation for other states to improve upon everything that we have started. So yes, it may have taken, 4 years for us to try and have a real conversation about capital as it's, married into the process. But then when you look at New Jersey and New York, they start their process with capital already baked into it. And so again, they come up to Boston, they say, what worked, what didn't work, how can we make it better? And so it's the foundation that we created that others will build upon, so that, a year from now, it's going to be automatic that capital or technical assistance or whatever else is needed is baked into the original legislation. And so I think that's where the celebration happens, is, downstream, when other states look at rolling out their program and saying, okay, what did Massachusetts do? What did New Jersey do? What did New York do? And so that's really, where the end results come into play.
I feel like everything that y'all brought up, kind of segued into another question that we had. I have done just a little bit of coverage of kind of just the work or the processes to get some of these dispensaries opened, especially in Black communities in Boston, and just in touching the surface. I know that it's a very grueling and just very step-heavy process of community engagement, community involvement, getting buy-in from the community, taking in their needs and concerns. And I know that a lot of varying, or just in different areas, that there has been some pushback and a lot of concerns about a cannabis dispensary opening in their community. And I guess I just wanted to know from y'all, how do y'all balance kind of just the needs of y'all wanting to get a piece of this really lucrative industry, with also balancing the needs or concerns of residents who may not want one of these businesses in their area? Just wanting to know how y'all navigate that in this process.
It's not easy. I think, what proponents of cannabis to businesses always try to do is find out how we can get people to say yes, and what we can do, to give back, to the communities that are allowing us to site. And, Kobe's open in Grove Hall, and he can definitely speak to this more, but, no matter what you offer, it's really difficult to get the most vocal in the community to hear what you're saying and hear that you are trying to do the right thing. There's always a very silent majority of people who just don't want to get involved in the drama, if you will. But it is a vocal group of people who consistently do come out and, want to just say no, no, no. Um, Unfortunately, I'm from Roxbury. I live in Roxbury. We wanted our first location to be in Roxbury because we saw the ills and the harms that happened from the war on drugs in this community, and we wanted to bring our model to that community and make it a real positive. Didn't happen. We made it through the Boston Cannabis Board, but we were denied at zoning for, because of the community pushback. We actually didn't have any pushback on Newbury Street when we proposed that location, which was great because of location. It's an amazing location, but sad because we wanted to put our first location in our own backyard. So it's not easy, and navigating it is just for us is just finding ways to get people to hear what you're saying and hear that you're trying to do the right thing in this. It is controversial. We recognize that, but how do we get people to come on board?
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I would definitely echo what Brian said, is that it's I can't even begin to explain the complexity of the process. And for someone who doesn't even understand, how governments necessarily work, nuanced is not even the right word to explain, what it takes to try and get through the process, and the pitfalls that are involved, the politics that are involved, the people you need to talk to that you didn't know you need to talk to. And the world of this realm of politics is unlike anything you've ever seen before. And the invisible hands that are that are involved, and just to sit at a community meeting and get beat up by the community over and over and over again, that takes this emotional toll. And then to go through this gauntlet only to be denied, at ZBA or something, and then have to start all over somewhere else. It's not for the average person. Like, I don't want to say it's barriers, but in terms of the pathways to success, it's definitely filled with a lot of pitfalls and obstacles that the average person just has a hard time even understanding where to start. So it is not easy at all. But again, it's for the person that that is determined, but and then resourceful and reaching out to others to kind of figure out, like, how did you do it? How can I, where can I, I think that this is definitely about leveraging your resources and creating opportunity for new resources to leverage and say, hey, I don't want to have to make my own mistakes. What did you do, and how can I avoid making, mistakes? And and I think that's really the key in this whole equation is leveraging resources so that you're not, stumbling and falling and having a hard time getting up.
Absolutely. I did want to say, unfortunately, we're running low on time, and I wish we could spend like more than an hour with all of you, because it's been incredible having all of you on and hearing your voices speak so eloquently about this. We want to thank you all for being here today, and we'll certainly keep on following what you're doing in the future. Thank you all so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wish you all the best of luck with your endeavors. Thank y'all so much.
You guys.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so before we segue into our next segment, I just have a quick little announcement from the Globe. The Globe is proud to present Sustainability Week, April 19th through the 23rd, which is going to be a week-long virtual event series focusing on the climate crisis, current environmental issues, and actionable solutions. You can learn more about these free events at globe.com/sustainability week. And if you're just tuning in, thank you so much for joining us this morning for Black News Hour. I'm Tiana Woodard, and I'm here with Kari Thompson. And today we're having a talk about the cannabis industry, what it means for us Black folks and other people of color in the community. And so before the break, we heard from 3 dispensary owners and a policy expert about kind of just the really convoluted process it takes to get one of these businesses open, while also just balancing the needs of the community while also trying to push forward and get access to the lucrative industry that cannabis is involved with. But yeah.
Yeah, and we understand, and we've hinted at it in the last segment. We know views on cannabis use and legalization vary, right? Even if it is decriminalized here, and we're working towards having it more within the community, we understand that not everybody's going to have the same reaction, the same feeling towards it, and we want to hear from a wide array of voices in the community on this. And so, here to discuss their positions with us on why maybe they're not so keen on it are Reverend Minyard Culpepper and Imam Talib Mehdi.
Good morning. Good morning.
And so Reverend Minyard Culpepper is a community advocate, lawyer, senior pastor at Pleasant Hill Missionary Baptist Church in Dorchester, where he has served for the last 21 years. Recently retired from his longtime post as regional counsel for the Housing and U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Reverend Culpepper announced in March that he is running for the state Senate seat representing the newly drawn 2nd Suffolk District in Dorchester.
Good to see you again, Reverend Culpepper.
Good to be seen, Tiana and Kari. Kari, just one correction. That must be an old bio you have, because I'm into 26 year as pastor Pleasant Hill Baptist Church.
Look at that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Not far from where this proposed cannabis warehouse is.
All right. Thank you very much for adding that. We appreciate that.
Yeah,
Obviously,
appreciate it.
veteran in the community. Thank you so much.
So sorry about that correction, but here we also have Imam Talib Mehdi, and he's the resident Imam of Masjid Al Quran in Dorchester. He was born and raised in Cambridge, and he participates in several community organizations that represent diverse populations, including the United Way Faith of Action, the Cooperative Metropolitan Ministries, the Islamic Council of New England, and the Muslim American Society Northeast Region Council. Thank you so much for you both for being here. I know that you're both busy men and that y'all have a wealth of knowledge to share with us and decades of wisdom. Thank you for being in community with us both.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I guess we could get started, and I guess the first thing I really wanted to ask you is that I know that I personally did not grow up on at the height of the quote unquote war on drugs, and that you both have been here in this area for such a long time, and I guess I just wanted to ask you both kind of about maybe your personal experiences with cannabis and kind of just the ills or the negative impact it might have had on your community, and kind of how that informed the work that you do today to push it out of the community.
Thank you, Tiana. Brother E-Man, you want me to go first? I'll go first.
Please go ahead, yes.
Look, I think one of the interesting things about where we are today is that no one could not deny that both the prosecution and the legalization of marijuana has had a large impact on our communities. I mean, look, the war on drugs in particular, the way it disproportionately affected our communities with over-policing, higher sentencing, mass incarceration, and you heard a lot about that. You've heard a lot about mass incarceration and the war on crimes back in the 90s. One of the interesting things about it today is with this legalization of marijuana, we've become a lot closer to ending a practice that destroyed many lives. I mean, when you think about it, lives that were impacted by time served, personal future growth, employment opportunities, that folks lost all of that because of this disproportionately impacted war on crime. So when you think about it, when you think about now remedying many things that happened years ago that shouldn't have happened, this legalization of marijuana, and when you look at the law, it talks about how the communities that are disproportionately affected by the war on crime years ago, and how they're trying to balance and focus on bringing equity to the business community. That's still a challenge. One of the things that I have fought against this warehouse that is proposed for Grove Hall is the zoning issues. This is really a zoning issue. This is not an issue of whether it's morally right for me or morally wrong. I know there will be marijuana business establishments in our communities. There's been a lot of talk about jobs. There's been a lot of talk about equity. But when you really think about it, we don't want a marijuana establishment on every corner like we have Dunkin' Donuts. And when you look at that buffer zone, the buffer zone is there for exactly that purpose, to make sure that you don't have them on every corner. And when you look at the buffer zone says that the establishment, it can't be within a half mile or 2,640 feet from another establishment. When you look at exclusionary zoning, and by the way, I just taught last year a law class at Suffolk Law School. One of the things I focused on in class was the impact that zoning has had on segregating our community for years. Same thing with regard to zoning here. The zoning law is designed to make sure that there are only so many cannabis establishments within a certain area. And so when we start relaxing that zoning laws to allow one to come within that half mile, we've already set precedent. So how can you tell another one that they can't come within a half mile and you're allowing it for others? I think we're fighting hard to and stand fast with the zoning laws. Let me just say something else about this new law, because there's that new Senate law that's passed, right? The interesting thing about that is there's a provision in there that has to do with expungement. And I think when you look at the disproportionate impact that war on crime had on our communities, I think we have to go back and we have to try and remedy that. One of the remedies is expunging the records of those that were incarcerated, those that were charged and found guilty. I think those records have to not just be sealed, because sealing is something different. When you seal a record, there's still the possibility that employers can get to see the record. When you expunge it, that means that it's removed, that it's not there. And I think that we really have to work hard at expunging the records of those that have been set back because of those issues that we were dealing with the practices that destroyed many lives when there was this years ago. And you know, when you think about this new bill, just one more thing about this new bill, it talks about social consumption sites, and it talks about amendments. And I think there's a lot of things in the new bill that I like. One of the things that I think happened with the old bill when it was rolled out is that, and I think many times laws are amended and laws are changed in order to look at some of the deficiencies in that law. So when you look at the wide range of what that law did, I had serious reservations about how it was rolled out, and even with the new law, because when you look at what happened with things like the Mare Fall River, and look at how that happened. So I think we have to, number one, we have to make sure that we stick hard and fast to the zoning law, because the zoning laws historically have not worked in our favor. And I think we also have to look at expunging records of those that have been set back because of the that error that everyone wanted, when, especially Congress. I remember that 1993 bill, Bill Clinton passed that bill, and there were folks that were on both sides of it. But when you really think about where we are now, we have an opportunity to remedy some of the past disproportionate impacts on our community that happened years ago. And let me let the E-Man talk. I can talk about this for the next.
You're okay. I knew you had a lot of zoning experience, so I knew you were going to get into the nitty gritty. Thank you.
Sure, but yeah, Imam, if you wouldn't mind giving us your perspective on this.
Yes, peace be upon you all. Yeah, a few years back, about 10 years ago, I went to the Strand Theater, heard a speaker speak, and he was talking. He had a message for the citizens of Boston, and he said to tell the people of Boston that they don't have a race problem, that they have a mind problem. I see this cannabis thing as a shift in the minds of people, thinking that it's okay because people of faith, they don't sell drugs. People of faith don't do drugs. People of faith don't have drugs stored up. So there's been a shift in people's mindset, especially unfortunately for African American community people, younger people. There's been a shift in their thinking, and they're thinking that because everybody else is doing something, then I should get on the bandwagon too. So selling drugs, they should know, if they did that research, they should know the impact that it has had for us as African Americans. And someone who has been addicted before in my life, marijuana is the start of things. Marijuana brings you into all those other drugs that will really take your mind away from the best of yourself. And I think that's what we're really fighting against. We're really fighting against an African American community, that we're trying to find the best in this community and bring out the best in our people, and so that they can make progress in a real natural way. And drugs is not the answer. The other thing is, I'm just so disappointed in the youth, or those who want to have this cannabis, especially at the place where they wanted that, because Don Muhammad, who was a strong advocate for years and years, the Nation of Islam was a strong advocate against drugs. So for them to come and say that they're going to have a drug facility at his place, and I understand that once you sell a place, you can do with it what you want. But I think there should be some respect for elders in our community if we say we're really for the community, and not just giving lip service for that I belong to the community, but really if the effort, what I see from the cannabis is going to be a lot of destruction on the community, or in the community.
So I wanted to ask probably one more question, if we could get both of you to answer. I mean, we've heard the war on drugs come up a couple of times now in kind of both of our segments. And, as Reverend Culpepper alluded to, it's like it hurt everyone, right? And it's hurt both sides of this conversation. And obviously one side is wanting to get in on the economic promise of it, and then obviously there's the other side that is opposed to that. At the same time, it would seem that in the end everybody is fundamentally on the same side. So my question to you is, for both of you, how do we bridge that gap of all of us, continuing to work toward the same goal, kind of regardless of regardless of which side you're on? And if not the cannabis industry, like what are the alternative ways that you would like to see to empower the Black community instead? If you would like to start, Imam, and then we can take it to the Reverend.
I think education is the key. Education is that strong element to lift any people out of poverty into a brighter light. So I think we should be investing in schools and just education, in our own schools maybe. The public schools is going through a lot of turmoil right now, and have been. So what's wrong with us, young and old, coming together and dealing with this thing called education, come education, and begin to educate our own, or at least give them another alternative through education. So I'm a opponent of strong education, and I think our minds can meet on that.
Let me just add to what the E-Man said, because I don't want anyone to think that I'm anti-business. I believe the community deserves a wide range of businesses that fosters all types of economic growth. I mean, from the arts to clean tech. We were on a call last night with the city. We were on a Zoom call. We're fighting for a community center right around the corner on Geneva Ave behind the Burke School. There was a while they had that big balloon over there that was leaking and had all kinds of issues. We've been fighting for that community center for years. And I think it's important that we realize that we're not saying that, I mean, there's one establishment there, we think there's a wide range of business opportunities that can go into the community. When we were on the last call with the cannabis proposed owners, they talked about restaurants not being in the area. Well, we do need more restaurants in that area that are open to later in the night. We do need a place where we could go and sit down and eat with our families. And so when you look at the new bill, there are some things in the new bill that I support. I support when they talk about the capitalization of the Cannabis Social Equity Trust Fund. They're going to provide additional dollars to consultants to work specifically with minority and women businesses to assist in getting approvals. Because when you really think about the startup of women and minority businesses, many of them are just starting up. There's a certain expertise that has to go in with how these cannabis establishments are shaped, how they're designed, how they navigate through the laws. And so I'm all for some of the things that are in the new law. I also think that when you look at the non-minority businesses, that they must show 25% minority subcontractors for approval. You know, like I said before, you got to expunge those records. I really think that's important. And when you look at the new Senate bill, and you look at the financial struggles that have been created by the Social Equity Trust Fund, I think it needs to be capitalized with 10% of the state's revenue from the cannabis excise tax. This would be an estimated $18 million in fiscal 2023. And so when you really think about it, this state administered fund, I think we need, look, why can't we have a community center, right? That you take the Cannabis Social Equity Trust Fund, and instead of, we were on with the city last night for more than an hour. So why can't we take that Cannabis Social Equity Trust Fund, build that community center where that vacant lot has been for years? Why can't we take that and establish some art center in Grove Hall? Why can't we start some clean tech centers in Grove Hall? I mean, when you look at this, a Cannabis Social Equity Fund, if it's used in the right way, it can help build up the Grove Hall area in a way that it's not now. Let me just finally say this, that I grew up in Grove Hall. My grandfather had a shoe store in Grove Hall. I worked in that shoe store right in Grove Hall on Washington Street, right across from the mosque. There was a Blair's food store. There was a food market right where the Masonic Lodge is. Look, I know Grove Hall. I live a stone's throw distance from Grove Hall today. The church is a stone's throw distance from Grove Hall. Grove Hall has always been a thriving business center where different activities, businesses of all sorts contributed to the economic growth in our community. And that's what we want to build up Grove Hall to be. When you look at the CDC and you look at how Grove Hall over the last 15 years has been built up, you wouldn't believe the battle that went into trying to get that Stop and Shop into that small center there. You wouldn't believe what it took to build up Grove Hall to where it is today. And look, let me just go back to that buffer zone, because
Reverend, I would love to hear you keep going and going. But we've got it. We got to get it on to our next segment.
Okay.
Listen, I just want to say to you, Reverend, and to you, Imam, thank you so much for coming on with us and sharing your side of things. I mean, it's a wealth of experience and a different perspective on things. I think people do really need to hear. So I greatly appreciate you both coming on.
Kari, let me just close on this. So I wanted to just go right to the heart of the question, how we can work together. Because I think one of the things that the bills call for is these host community agreements. And I think you gotta have we are the hosts. I've been there all my life. You've gotta have host community agreements where the community is saying, we approve this. It just can't be approved downtown. We're gonna fight this because, again, I think the host community agreement is critical. It goes right to the question that you asked. How can we work this out? We can work this out with a host community agreement. Look, Tiana, thank you so much for having me. Kari, thank you so much for having me. I'll be glad to come back on. Just let me know when, where, and what time.
Wish you the best of luck with your campaign, and the Imam, thank you both so much. I know that y'all are busy and respect
Thank
your
you.
wisdom and look up to it.
Thank you so much for having me. Great show.
Thank you so much. So let's get into the next thing. We got Black News Hour is a proud sponsor of the 26th American Black Film Festival, an experience like no other, bringing together Black culture enthusiasts, artists, executives, and filmmakers from around the world for 5 days of screenings, talk events, exclusive parties, and high-powered networking. Join them this June live in person or virtually. Visit abff.com for more information. All right, and with that, I'm gonna take a step back and I'm gonna turn it over to Let's Talk Boston team co-hosts Tiana Woodward and Alana Bearfield of The Globe. Thank you all so much. Go for it.
No, thank you so much. Really great conversation so far. Really captivated everything what you've been saying. My name is Alana Bearfield, and you are listening to Let's Talk Boston. And I'm really excited to be diving into this conversation with you, Tiana, because we are going to be talking to the one and only Ricardo Pierre Lewis, who is the only Black man to own a parking business. Yep, that is right. I said the only Black man in Boston. And that's just an accomplishment that I think everyone should acknowledge for the work that he is doing in the community. And there's the man of the hour, Ricardo. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey guys, good morning everyone. How you guys doing?
Good, good. I was like talking to Alana this morning, and we went out to eat earlier this week in the North End, and we were eating, and I know she was struggling to find parking, and I was like, we really could have used your business. I know you're not in the North End yet, but we were like, dang.
I like that. You said the word, one of the key words, yet. We're not in the North End yet, so I do like that.
We need you.
Not there yet, but you've taken a lot of parts within Boston, Roxbury, Fenway, Back Bay, and Cambridge. I mean, those are prime locations that visitors, locals are, traveling to, and to see that you have such a representation there. I kind of want to talk a little bit more of you being a Black man. You went to University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth, and to really dive in a little bit more on what it means to be the only Black man owning a parking business in Boston, and why is there such a lack of representation in those terms?
Great question. Well, let's look at the parking industry, right? If you look at parking in Boston and like New York, I always like to reference New York City because, driving in New York City is like almost impossible. If you have a parking spot, it's like gold, right? And so in these cities, it's very condensed, very highly populated, and parking is always an issue. I got into the parking industry when I was in college. I was living on campus. I wanted a part-time job to help me, support me through college, and I decided to apply to the largest parking company at the time called Ultimate Parking. They hired me, and then that's how I got familiar with the valet operation, just being a valet, being outside restaurants, providing services, and noticing that it wasn't only the guests going to the restaurants that had parking challenges, it was all of Boston that had parking challenges. And so that's how I got a first, hand-on base on, okay, parking is interesting and you can really make some money doing this. And it's a small industry, but it's a very lucrative industry, to be honest with you. When you look at someone like myself, or someone Black and brown, right? Normally we are in the operation side. We're not in a leadership position, or we're not in a management position. So we really don't understand the full grasp or structure on how to actually start a company and get into the parking industry. And just like any other city, it's very, tight knit and relationship based. So relationship building is one of the top priorities to really be successful in any industry, especially in parking in the city of Boston.
When doing a little bit of research on you, and just to make sure, I remember reading about how you kind of have proposed a bid to the P3 parcel in Roxbury, right? Just to make sure, and for any listeners who may not know about that parcel, you should really look into it. P3 in Roxbury, I think it's exactly 7.7, but close to 8, a really big parcel, and there are a lot of people who kind of propose different ways to use that land to benefit the surrounding community. And I know that it's kind of been a part of your dream. I just wanted to know a little bit more about I guess like what do you envision for that parcel and like how could it benefit the community? Because I believe you're also part of like a Roxbury neighborhood group, right? Or am I
Yeah,
wrong?
United
Okay.
Neighbors of Roxbury. That's correct.
Okay.
I see how you like mixed in two questions in one.
Yeah.
So I know we don't have that much time, so I'll try to tackle them. So let's talk about P3 real quick. P3, I'm just really honored and proud to be a part of my team. And that's with my partners is HYM, Thomas O'Brien, and Reverend Brown. And literally, I met Tom years ago. Tom is, he's been doing great things. He did stuff in down. He did some projects in downtown Boston, all throughout Boston metro area. And I remember when I met Tom about like 6 years ago, I told Tom, I said, hey, Tom, I don't know how, but me and you will work together one day. And he goes, all right, Ricardo, when that opportunity comes, I'll be more than happy to take advantage of it. And P3 came about. And I live in Nubian Square. And P3 is literally across the street from the Boston Police Department, right? For you guys who may not know, it's literally that empty lot with an existing building on it that's directly across the street on Tremont Street. And so when Tom approached me and said, Ricardo, I'd love for you to be a part of this deal. What would it take? The first thing I thought in my head, I said, listen, I have the opportunity and I might as well take advantage of it. If I don't ask, then, it'll never come about. And I said, Tom, I want equity in this deal. And Tom said, okay, what are you thinking? And so with that project, I'm very excited because we're not only helping developing the garage, we're not only managing the garage, we also have equity in the garage, which you do not see. I believe we will be the first Black-owned company to develop, manage, and have equity in a garage in the city of Boston. So I'm really, really proud about that we got ourselves in that position. And now, we just have to go in and win the bid, which I believe, we have the best proposal to move forward. So I'm excited about that. And what was the second question?
Yeah, I guess I kind of I think I kind of like really didn't articulate it, but kind of I was thinking in my mind, just like being a part of that neighborhood group. Like I know that you are really like invested in giving back to the community, and I kind of just wanted to know a little bit more about how this like P3 proposal could help you in that mission of giving back to the community that you're a part of.
Well, so I'm the board treasurer of United Neighbors Lower Roxbury, and the best thing I did while starting my business was join this nonprofit organization, community organization. It just taught me a lot about the history in Roxbury, especially Lower Roxbury, and just everything that has happened since 1971 till now. There's a street in Roxbury, Ball Street, and right now it's pretty much just grass. It's all green grass, but that had about 100 brownstones on that building. On that land at one point. And when the city of Boston started urban renewal, unfortunately those homes, are no longer there, right? Those homes were destroyed and put down. And so with that being said, just the people that's been living in the neighborhood for decades and have long history there, I would hear these stories. And I started off as a volunteer in 2014. There's a volunteer. I literally had a company. I used to walk up and down the neighborhood. The president now, Bill Singleton, approached me and he said, you need to join this nonprofit organization. I was like, Bill, I'm trying to start a company. I don't got time to be, giving my time up and try to volunteer. I gotta figure out how I'm gonna take over this parking industry.
Right.
And he convinced me, and I said, you know what, Bill, I'm gonna attend a meeting. And so I did attend the meeting, and just to hear how passionate these people were, and just everything that has happened within this neighborhood, it was kind of like, why would I not want to be a part of this and help? Mm-hmm. So I started off as a volunteer, and then I did that for about almost 2 years, and it came board election. And so Bill was like, you should try to be on the board. And I was like, Bill, no one knows me. All they know that I always just volunteer, I don't think they're gonna vote for me. And Bill's like, no. And so Bill, at the meeting, he nominates me in front of everyone without telling me. He goes, oh, I think Ricardo will be a good board member, and he should, and we should give him this opportunity. So I got up, and literally off the top of my head, I had to give a quick summary on who I was and what I was doing and why I should be a part of this board. And believe it or not, I think I had about 70% of people in that room voted for me. I became a board member. And it was the best thing I could have done. Literally, it taught me just so much about community. so much about giving back. It taught me a great history, what's going on here in Boston and Lower Roxbury. And I'm honored, to be honest, I'm very, very honored to just be a part of that board and to serve Lower Roxbury. And I also want to mention, we are a nonprofit community-based organization that owns 90 Wonder Street. It's an existing building. We are actually in the development stage. We're waiting on a slither piece that's next to our building to be released so we can start building. We're building affordable housing on that, a mixed usage, and there's also going to be a commercial basement, which we're going to do training and development on. So I'm really excited about that. It took a long, long time. When I joined the organization, that property was, the city of Boston was trying to come in and take over the property. It's been abandoned for about like 20 to 25 years. And the city of Boston was just like, this is doing the neighborhood no good. So they wanted to actually come in and take over the property and redevelop it, or, you know, give it off to another developer so they can develop that into something. And Bill Singleton at the time, I keep crediting Bill because Bill, as you know, Bill's just an amazing guy, he's done amazing work, and he's also the president too of the organization. He put this group together, and that's when he assembled this election and brought me in. And just being a volunteer, I learned about what was going on and a little bit about process when it comes to property, and the city can take over property. And he fought, you know, and we almost lost. We were at a point where our 501c3 status was in jeopardy of being taken away. We owed back taxes on the property, about $100,000. And it was a mess, like literally it was a mess. Today, you know, we have our 501c3 status up to date. Those back taxes are gone. And we're actually, and I'm proud to say, we'll have a shovel in the ground, hopefully in a year. So
Wow.
I'm really excited about that.
No, I'm excited about it also. I mean, your work is literally what you've been doing. I think the biggest pillars of what when I've talked to you in different conversations, just hearing from this conversation, is that your biggest pillar is community, right? That you're always reaching back, that it's about the people, it's about networking, it's about not just saying words, but actually being about the work. And you have shown that. You know, you started Privé Parking, it was founded in 2012. It's been a minute, right? Like you've been in this
10 years in October. 10 years in October.
Congratulations. And it's really about how you tackle disparities in the community when it comes to health, education, housing, or even resource allocation. And you've really done the groundwork to do that. You've also mentioned to me in the past of that you've always asked the question, what are you doing for others? And you continue to, you know, pass the torch, right? For other people. How you mentioned that you had so many mentors in your corner. What kind of piece of advice can you give to up and coming entrepreneurs who are trying to come up with a business plan and it's challenging and you don't know where to start, specifically for the Black and Brown communities, for entrepreneurs?
That's a good one. You know, I feel like it's not just one, it's like a book. I can you write a book of all these things, but if I had to narrow it down just to one, it would be open to criticism. Right. I think criticism, we don't know how to take that very well, constructive criticism, right? We feel like sometimes we'll get defensive, depending how it's you know, presented or who's talking to us or who's giving us, you know, feedback, right? And just be open to it. And always remember, your vision is your vision. That doesn't, you know, your vision, not everyone will see your vision, because I like to say that's between you and God. And as long as you and God have that relationship, or you and whoever or whatever you may worship and honor have that vision, then that's meant for you. That's your imagination. That's something for you to do. So don't get upset or get confused or get frustrated that other people can't see that vision. That is your vision. You know, they always say, you know, you're crazy until you're proven right. And so, you know, that would be my advice. You know, when I started my company, I remember I told my parents, I'm starting a parking company in Boston. And I think my dad hung up the phone on me because he didn't believe, you know, I had a college degree, and I literally told him I wasn't going to be in corporate anymore. And he was like, you know, something's wrong with my dad. I mean, something's wrong with my son. You know, I got to hang this phone up. He's losing his mind. And at the time, he didn't understand the vision that I had. And only myself and God knew that vision. And now, you know, years later, Freeway parking is at a point where I'm very proud and they're proud. And, you know, just that would be my advice to other people, literally, is your vision is your vision. And don't get mad, don't get frustrated. You know, just be open to criticism and continue on that vision.
Right. Right. No, continue on that vision. We thank you so much for dedicating your time to come on to the Black News Hour, Let's Talk Boston segment. And again, Ricardo, you are going to continue to be a trailblazer in the community and excited to see all the things that you do.
Thank
Have
you.
a nice day.
I appreciate it. Good morning. I mean, have a good day.
Okay, well, I'm Tiana Woodard, and thank y'all so much for tuning into the latest edition of Black News Hour. And if you want more updates, you can visit globe.com/Black News Hour.
I'm Kyrie Thompson. Thank you all for joining us. Black News Hour will be on the road next time on April 29th, where they'll broadcast from the How to Boston While Black Summit. Thanks a lot, Tiana, for joining me for this.
Thank you so much, Kari. It's really fun to be in community with you. And
Read all about